but maybe to just come to a greater understanding and appreciation of the document that we already have. Because guess what? The Center for the Constitution in Montpelier, Virginia, which was the former home of James Madison, who was the steerer of the proceedings at the Constitutional Convention in May 1787, well, they took a poll 2 years ago. And I talk about that on our website, constitutioncafe.org. But they took a poll and they asked Americans of voting age if you could change the Constitution significantly, would you change it? And so most of us older folks said, no way, we wouldn't change it at all. Younger voters, 18 to 40 or so, they said they'd make significant changes. But then there was another survey question. It was, have you read the Constitution the last number of years? Neither group had read it. It's only 4,300 some odd words. It's for the most part, even if it's open to infinite interpretation sometimes, it's accessible. It's very succinct compared to most constitutions. Have you ever tried to plow your way through California's Constitution? It's yeah, it wouldn't win any Book of the Month Club awards, I can tell you that. But it's a beautiful document. It pervades every aspect of our lives. So I think it's in our best interest to know what's in it. And so that also is a big impetus to why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I believe that you can't have a thriving democracy without constitutional literacy. I believe that didactic education in the Constitution, where you regurgitate parts of it, which is good, I think it's a healthy exercise, but that, or just engaging ad nauseum in your, discussing and debating what your interpretation is. I think that's perfectly fine, but that's not what Constitution Cafe is all about. Another way to look at it is just to immerse ourselves in it in a forward-looking way and ask ourselves, what, if anything, would we change and why? So y'all game to do that? Yeah? Okay, just you and me then. You're the only one who raised his hand. So, but that's what we're going to do today. And hopefully over time, if enough of you are enthused, you might consider starting an ongoing Constitution Cafe group. And if you just go to our constitutioncafe.org site, there's a very thorough guide on how to start and facilitate an ongoing group. And there's no better place than libraries. There's no better place to bring thoughtful people together than libraries. Libraries and librarians are the unsung heroes of the universe. They've been very, very good to me, aren't they? They truly, truly are. They've been so receptive to all of my dialogue activities in ways that no one else has. And I'm so grateful to you and to Felicia of Cal Humanities for having me here today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off at the very beginning. First of all, how many, is there anybody here who has memorized the preamble? Can you, don't look at us, let me hear it.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States.
Let's give it up. And he was saying it right along with you. And how did you learn that? It was for class?
Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock. Great. What's your name?
Matt.
Matt? Very good. And what's your name? Art, how did you learn it?
Just because I wanted to recite the first sentence in the Declaration of Independence has 52 words in it, and I know that.
That's fantastic. Who else knew it? Somebody else raised it. Did you?
I memorized it, but I lost when he was doing it. Yeah,
okay. Well, that's fantastic. All right, so we're going to start off then. Can everybody see the board? Should I turn it a little bit? So there it is as it's written now. And I'm going to just write, let's put we the people of the United States. Now, remember, you have latitude. You are the framers of a new Constitution. So you have the latitude. We're doing what Jefferson, he would be very pleased with us being gathered today. To make some changes to that if you want to. To even consider making some changes. Just maybe consider that. And so I just want to throw out to you, what might you want to change if you could, if you had your druthers? Is there Any language in "we the people" that you might want to consider changing? Yes, ma'am.
Maybe citizens?
Maybe
Because
citizens.
when it was written, they sort of weren't. They was just people.
Say that again. When it was written,
They weren't citizens yet. There wasn't anything to be a citizen of.
wasn't anything to be a citizen of. Well, we did have another constitution before this. It was the Articles of Confederation of Perpetual Union. I think there, at least those who were in the colonies were, for the most part, considered citizens. But that doesn't gainsay your point, though. I mean, the purpose of a preamble is what? Why do we have a preamble?
Introduce something.
Introduce, yes. What else?
Set the stage.
Set the stage for what's to come. So, let's say that you've decided, and I hope you do, to have an ongoing group. This might be the template for the articles that you would devise to come up with. So, language is important. What we set the stage for here will determine what comes next in terms of what articles might follow if you decide to keep getting together. So, we the citizens. What might be the advantages of having we the citizens instead of we the people?
Excluding everybody else.
And why would that be an advantage?
Well, we have done that, and whether we wanted to or not. We've excluded in the beginning everybody not of the white race. We took the Cherokees out of Georgia, and put them on the Trail of Tears. We treated the blacks and the Reds. We went out to the Redskins and killed them all, and we caught them.
Committed genocide.
Yeah.
So, and women were excluded as well.
That's right.
Very much so.
And the black man in the Constitution is only 1/3 of a white man.
Was 3/5.
Oh, 3/5, thank you.
3/5 clause, that's right. So then, I think you're saying that whoever decided to write these words was a hypocrite. No? Not hypocritical?
No, I don't think they had the ownership that a citizen would have.
Okay.
You were either born or became a naturalized citizen and therefore had ownership of this thing.
Okay. Because one of the clauses in the existing Constitution elaborates the powers of Congress. And one of the powers that the original framers of our Constitution gave to Congress was to establish uniform law for immigration and naturalization. So they were thinking about those things back then. Alexander Hamilton wasn't born in the United States. But he was in by the time they decided to rewrite the Articles of Confederation and come up with this. Yes, sir.
Before we had the United States, nobody was born in this.
Before we had it, except for Native Americans.
Right. There was no United States.
And they probably came from someplace else originally as
I mean,
well.
there was no United
Yes,
States. so you
right.
couldn't say that.
So suddenly, though, we do have this thing. The first time it was mentioned was in the Declaration of Independence. The first time it was called that by name. So, what do you think? How many of you would be open to the idea of changing we the people to we the citizens? Anybody else? Who does not like that idea? I see a lot of head shaking. Why not? I saw you shaking your head.
Well, I just think it's more inclusive to say "we the people," and that if you say "we the citizens," the comment that was made earlier about people being left out is still a consideration, and I think that while certainly voting privileges go to the citizens, and I don't have a problem with that, I think that the country is made up of all the people who live here. And certainly there's controversy about whether some should or shouldn't.
Right.
But I think that it's a more inclusive, it's more inclusive to say "we the people," and so I think whether they planned it that way or not,
Right.
you mentioned the 3/5 and all that business, that might have been their way of trying to include everybody, even those that they were disagreeing about whether they should include them or not. And so I think that we should still stay inclusive rather
Well,
than exclusive.
Well, I think the framers were pretty savvy folks. I don't know how much about the Constitutional Convention you know, but it started out with 55 intrepid souls. The only charge was to consider tweaking our original Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. But James Madison and Alexander Hamilton had other ideas. Once they got them there, they spilled the beans and made it clear they wanted to just start all over again. But the Articles of Confederation, our first Constitution, had a hard and fast stipulation that in order to make changes to it, there had to be delegates, number one, from all the colonies turned states. But guess what? One state didn't show up. Do you know who that was?
Georgia.
No, they did. They had GPS page.
Oh,
One state didn't show up. Do you know who it was? Little.
Rhode
Island.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. They like Patrick Henry of Virginia, my state, who was invited but didn't attend. He smelled a rat. Rhode Island smelled a rat. They liked the highly decentralized form of government that the Articles gave them. So, believe it or not, because the Articles of Confederation said that in order to make any changes to it, all 13 states had to have delegates and only 12 states sent them, the Constitutional Convention was unconstitutional. Should we file a motion with the Supreme Court to ask them if we could go back? What is my point? My point is this: by the time the new Constitution was crafted, only 39 people were left. The rest were so livid that they were changing the articles that they went back to their states to fight against ratification. So it was 39 people who crafted these words, "We the people." 39 white, affluent males.
Slaveholders.
In many cases, not all cases, crafted that language, and it was crafty of them because they did it on purpose to make it speak to people who weren't part of the Constitution Convention proceedings. It was closed proceedings. It was held behind closed doors. We have no public record of the gatherings whatsoever. But they thought that we the people, and I believe it was a brilliant move. So you think we've grown into that we the people now, even if it was for...
It's a work in progress.
Okay, work in progress, what do you mean?
And we're still getting there.
Are people's-
We're not as all-inclusive as we should be.
Well, who's not being included?
I think there are different disadvantages now. Okay, it's not as if people are being, you cannot participate, but differences in socioeconomic, educational, all of these things feed into people not participating fully in democracy.
And the person behind you, what's your name?
Roseanne.
Roseanne, you had said that it's not just about the voting people, right? Or
Well, there's always a lot of people that are gonna be in any country that are not citizens, but your country needs to, you can't just ignore the other people as if they don't exist, and so, to me, it's more inclusive to say we the people. I think it was a brilliant move.
But if you do say, keep the words, we the people, in order to be inclusive, does that then, thinking in terms of articles that you're going to lay out following the preamble, does that mean that those who are excluded, if they're on American soil, maybe here legally, maybe here illegally, does it mean that they have maybe the right to say, well, this is we the people, I'm here, I'm one of the people? In other words, your point was maybe it's better to be a little bit exclusionary, to really specify who we're
Not
talking about?
exclusionary,
Yeah.
you must have responsibility, and being a citizen makes you responsible. We the people, you can kind of drift in and out. I might be interested, I might not.
Anybody else like that? Yes, go ahead.
It says of the United States.
So,
So it's the people of the United States, not visiting the United States.
so do you think it's implied that we're speaking about citizens?
I think it is.
You do think it is? Okay. Anybody else?
Yet we're a country of
Or
immigrants.
people that live here anyway.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, yes, ma'am.
Well, doesn't it specify later on what it takes to be citizens in the Constitution?
Well, what it specifies is that Congress can establish uniform laws for determining who can become a citizen. My Greek grandparents immigrated through Ellis Island in the 1920s. It took them about 7 years to become citizens here. There was such an influx of Greeks that Congress actually passed a law preventing any further Greeks from coming for quite some time. So laws have been anything but uniform when it comes to determining immigration status. Just think, if they hadn't made it we wouldn't be having this conversation today. Yes, ma'am.
You know, I think if what we're looking at as a country is a location where people have come together, but they have not clarified that they are a country yet. They are simply people gathered together, and they have not even become United States. They have been colonies and fought for statehood, but they haven't been brought together in a coalition that can make them the country.
Okay.
So that saying people rather than citizens is what they are.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the problems with the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, our first Constitution, they had already been states, but government was so highly decentralized that they couldn't raise taxes, they couldn't raise a standing army, they couldn't negotiate a treaty with another country unless all the states agreed to it. And it was impossible. Every single state legislature had to agree to it.
That's why people is
Yes.
apropos.
Apropos. Okay. So, are there any, yes.
In continuation of what that lady was saying, prior to the Civil War, 1861, it was the United States are. After 1865, the end of the Civil War, it became the United States is. And that's the difference.
It became, instead of a set of individual states,
Right.
became it all coalesced. That's very interesting. Is there any group that you can think of, I'm not talking about immigrants, but when it comes to not having equal input in the Constitution or in the laws, that is still left out? Yes.
Native American.
Native Americans?
At the time, or
Now.
now?
Now. Is there any group that might want to have, is there anybody here, let me ask if just this group, is there anybody here who cannot vote? Matt. You cannot vote. How old are you? 10. What's your name?
Sharon.
Sharon? And how old are you?
I'm 5.
And what's your name?
Chai.
Shy?
Chai.
Chai. Nice to meet you. I have a 6-year-old named Callie. You are 6. Oh! Yeah, I know. Once you start turning 6, you start lying about your age. Well, what about that? We have people who are citizens, who cannot have any input or do not. Would you like to be able to vote?
Yes.
Matt, would you?
I don't mind.
Which one don't you mind?
I don't mind that I don't have.
You don't mind that you don't have the right to vote. Why would you like the right to vote?
I feel important.
Oh.
Me too.
Well, do you know that in some other countries there are movements to dramatically lower the voting age so that children can, of a much younger age? Yes.
In the early 1940s, when we were going off to war, I went off to war, but I couldn't vote. And we screamed about it.
Well, and what happened?
They changed the
They
law.
changed it.
Yeah,
You can go fight and die for your country, but you can't vote.
that's right.
And now you can go fight and die for your country, but you can't drink a beer. You have to wait till you're 21.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's right. You know, there is a country, a very open society, that is considered one of the great models of freedom in the world, that has a constitution with no explicit right to vote. Do you know what country that is?
England,
England,
Israel.
Israel. Not sure, good guess, but it's closer to home.
Canada?
No, even closer. Even closer. United States. Look in our Constitution. There is no explicit right to vote. It says who shall not be excluded from voting, but it never explicitly says we the people or anyone else has the right to vote. So if I were rewriting it, sorry to be so leading, but I would kind of want that right spelled out a little more clearly. No explicit right to vote at all. What it does say in our original Constitution is that the only people that we could vote for directly way back when were members of Congress. Couldn't vote directly for senators, and we still can't vote directly for President of the United States. But the only one is the people could vote for members of Congress. And they didn't exactly say who the people were. That's the only other time that I know of that the Constitution mentions the people again. It's when it comes to voting for members of Congress. So it's just something to think about if you craft a Constitution, which you might want to spell out a little bit more. And maybe, I have to say, I held a dialogue with high school students yesterday in Sacramento. They were extremely educated on the issues, far more so than many adults my age. Very articulate. So I'm thinking, well, what if we did lower the voting age a little bit more? Would it really be that dramatically terrible? I don't know. It's something to think about. This Germany actually has considered changing it so the voting age starts at age 10. Yes. Oh, I see some people aghast. Yeah. They're way too influenced by their parents, right? Yeah. Who are you influenced by? Are we all influenced by people with some sort of... Okay, so how many would at least consider changing we the people to we the citizens? How many would just consider? Mac, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because you can vote in this gathering. Unless and until we decide you can't. Okay, so that's actually pretty good for an initial idea. All right, so let's go on to the next part. In order to form a more perfect union. What about that language? What do you think about that for modern times? Does it still, no matter what their intent was, does it speak to you now, even if it doesn't speak to you in the same way?
Well, you always aspire to perfection.
Who said that?
I did.
You did. What do you mean?
You are always aspiring for the best. And to say a perfect union, it means that you were wanting a unification of those who are there. That doesn't mean you'll get the best, or that it will be the best, but you want to bring them together.
Okay. Yes.
And there were some problems with the Articles of Confederation, that's why I'm not forgetting.
Yeah. And Art?
Yeah, when you think that in the election, Al Gore got over 500,000 votes, more than Bush. And Al Gore lost the election to Bush and 5 other people. 5 people decided we want Bush.
Okay. So how does that apply here?
Oh, it's a more perfect union. A union is what it says. A group of people coming together.
So you talked originally about how we went from the United States are to the United States is.
Yeah.
And so this is, in order to become more is.
That's right.
Would you change any of this language?
Oh.
Because the laws to come, the articles to come are about, if we keep this, about how to form what may always be a little bit out of reach, but a more perfect union. What do y'all think about that language now? You still like it? Matt?
Yeah.
Bernard? What's your book down? I want your thoughts.
It seems to me the idea of the more perfect union was a response to the imperfect union of the Articles of Confederation. What they really wanted was to form a more perfect country, that we were no longer the United States, but that we are one United States. So I would like to see the word changed to country.
Yes.
I would totally be against that.
Well.
Just because I believe that all the states are supposed to be as independent as possible, and the federal government is only for the big stuff that we all have to do together. Because I think government is supposed to be basically ourselves, and the more interference, I think, the worse. Because we don't need people to tell us, if we can buy 15-ounce soda or not, so to speak.
Okay, yes. Excuse me.
I'd like to submit, before we go too much further, some context. I don't know that the language I can say yet, but that we're part of the world. maybe citizens of the world, so to speak.
Oh, you
Because
wonder
that
about-
gets her citizens word in there.
Okay. Does anybody here maybe like the term country today? You do? How come?
Well, I don't understand why they said they wanted a more perfect union when they weren't a country.
You don't understand why they wanted to make a more perfect union when they weren't a country. And what, say that again?
Because they came from England.
They came from England.
We're studying that right now, the problems they had and why
Uh-huh.
people came here.
Okay. All right. And what were you going to say? Right there.
Well, at the time,
Thank you.
when they were rewriting this thing, you didn't say anything that would make one state more jealous than the other. Them states were absolutely, they were their own kingdom, basically. And you weren't saying they're part of a country. You're not gonna ignore
Right.
their status as states.
So back then, it would have been the death knell probably of this Constitution if they had done that. In fact, there was exactly one, we have latitude, if we used our existing Constitution as our platform for making change, we actually have latitude to change anything and everything in our existing Constitution except for one thing. You know what that is? There's one part of the Constitution that our existing Constitution says is sacrosanct and cannot be changed. You know what that is?
Where it says it can be changed.
It says that we cannot change the fact that each state, no matter what the size or population, has 2 senators. That is inviolable. And that speaks to what you're saying.
Yep.
But today now, in 2012, might you want to,
I think you have the same problem.
you have the same problem?
I think the states wouldn't go,
Well, we're the framers,
let
we
you.
can deal with all these folks. What do you think? Would anybody be open to country? Anybody else would open Bernard's idea of country? Anybody? Any takers going once? Pretend you're sneezing and I'll take that as a yes. Yes.
You remember, we pledge allegiance. We pledge allegiance to the Republic of America.
Okay. So,
Not a country, not a union, it's a republic.
so you're saying we should replace it with republic?
That's possible.
Do you hear that? And we are a constitutional republic. There's one word, the word democracy is nowhere to be seen in our 4,300 some odd word document. It's a constitutional republic with democratic elements, but nonetheless, what do you think about that? That's what we are. We're a republic. How many of you might consider changing it in order to form a more perfect republic? Here we go. All right, you're the man. We got to hit the road. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Bernard, you can't raise your hand. 4, 5. That's not going to help your see, 6. Well, that's very interesting. 6 would consider changing that to republic. Who would not consider that? How come? I want to know how.
I don't know that I wouldn't consider it, but what I'm thinking of is the following phraseology is government.
Uh-huh.
What about a more perfect government? Because that's what we're talking about.
Well, okay. And so what is it? We are a constitutional republic, and a constitutional republic is one in which those who are elected to office have to obey the form of government that's laid out in this document. Yes?
Well, at the time, you never would have sold without union.
At the time, but this isn't that time now, remember?
No, but, I mean, that's why it's
Right,
there.
but now, would you be open to the idea of changing it to republic? You would be. So, very good, yes.
I think that just the word union means that they're separate but together, which is just like when 2 people get married, there's a union of 2 separate people coming together to do something.
Right.
That's what union means.
Right.
If you change the words, then it's all glom together and all of a sudden you lose your independence. That's my point. That's why I would just use it, union.
You think republic would really dissolve that?
Well, I just think it's
still
not
speaking
as,
about an entity.
I don't think it's as definite, as defined as union is. Union,
Huh.
I
You know,
think.
I look at it as just the opposite, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, at least today. Union to me also has those connotations of marriage and things. But the divorce rate these days. And also, you know, there's a lot of, it's under the radar, but there's a lot of secessionist movements right now in the U.S. A lot of people would like a divorce
Texas.
in this country. And there's if you travel abroad, there's a lot of expatriates who want to have as little to do with this. Well, this is interesting. This is the first time, believe it or not, in quite a long time that this has been proposed. It's the first time that, right off the bat, that it has gotten so many.
Flag stands for the Republic.
It does stand for the Republic.
Do you ever ask the question of who we're addressing, or if it matters?
I'm sorry.
Just curious, like, who is the Constitution addressing? Is it to us, ourselves only? Do we ever ask that question? I'm just curious.
Come on in and sit. Anyway, and then the next part, we're constitutionalizing by the clock. So, establish justice. And again, this is setting the stage for what's to come. Establish justice. What do you think of that?
Everyone equal under the same flag.
Everyone equal under the same flag. So again, even if it had a different meaning to folks back then, has it, is it still language that maybe in different ways, but nonetheless speaks to us? Or is there anything you might, other language that you might want to change? Art, I'm looking to you, because you've been very influential.
We use words that we don't even believe. All men are created equal. We don't believe that. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We don't believe that. But we believe in two words. What's the two words? It's manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny.
That's what we believe. We get rid
That's
of
a
the
strong
black-
statement. Like you're speaking of all of us?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I
So
agree.
when we look at our history, we get rid of the black, the red, the yellow, the people. Get out of our way. We're going to the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, but Art, once again, let me steer you back. So what would you change about that based on what you said?
Justice is, even Plato couldn't come up with a definition of justice.
So the fact that we've never come up with any definition that we can all agree to or abide by, is that reason to do away with this?
No, it's a pretty word.
Yes, Felicia.
I don't know the problem with justice, it's the established. I don't know what established justice means. I mean, to me, it would be better if it were more aspirational.
So
You know, like
what-
promote justice or advance justice, something like that.
Is there one of these that you like better than the other, or they both pretty much? What do you think about who would be open to promote or advance justice instead of establish justice? Felicia, you're starting to rock. You would like that. How come?
Promote.
Why?
It sounds more better, like you're gonna help it.
Very nice. Yeah, like something that you're working towards instead of kind of setting in stone.
Oh, I like
That's very nice, Sharon. And the children shall lead. I'm giving you the right to vote. This is my project, and you got that right.
Like you say, you're almost 25?
Even though your sister lied about her age. That's beautiful.
I'm going to say I actually like established slightly better, although I think there could be a better word, but because I think it's more measurable. Promoting something is a little more open-ended. Now maybe that's more.
But isn't to establish a more perfect union also that sort of it's always a little bit out of reach?
Yeah, well, I also didn't like that.
Oh, you didn't like it?
Oh, well, let's
go back. Okay.
So I kind of liked more that republic word because I thought it was more definable. I like something that's a little more measurable because otherwise, if you speak to these like platitudes, if you make these giant sweeping statements, but they're not really measurable or achievable.
But again, this is just setting the stage.
Uh-huh.
The things that are going to be maybe measurable, maybe achievable are to come.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, preambles, at least, I thought it was a brilliant move that, again, brevity was, they created extraordinary preamble. If you look at other ones in other countries, there's nothing quite It's concise, but they left it to everything that's become, yes, ma'am.
But, you know, establish is saying something that it is not there. And establish means we have to have it, or we cannot have a country. Whereas the others are, well, promoting means today, tomorrow, next day. And advance means that it's not specific, it's ongoing.
For them, at the time that this thing was written, there was no justice under the British system for the colonies. It was none. They didn't have any right to, or anything.
But
Anytime they were on the wrong side of things, there was just, there was no justice.
But there were also those, and still are those, as we talked about earlier, who live here on the U.S. soil, for whom justice is sort of something that still is out of their reach, it seems like. You know, if we're talking about establishing justice.
Well, until they sort of said, we're gonna do this, then establish the jury, the court system we have today that sort of works. It ain't perfect.
Okay.
Thanks to the lawyers.
I would agree with what Mary said over there. Establish is a more fixed statement. If the goal is to establish justice and you succeed, then you have justice. Now, it doesn't mean that, we necessarily have justice, but if your goal is to establish it and you do succeed, then justice, which is the goal, which is a good thing, is there. And that's what we're saying is the goal. If your goal is just to promote justice, and everybody works hard at promoting it, but you never actually get it, then you're going to fall short of what is desired, which is justice. The same with advancing. You can advance it all you want, but if you don't succeed, you don't have it. But if you do all that needs to be done and you literally establish justice, then you'll have justice. And that's the goal, is to have justice.
For whom? For whom?
For everybody in the country.
Everybody in the country?
Yeah.
And
For all the people.
Yes. And by justice, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, people are going to argue about what justice means, but I mean, in terms of whether it be fairness or whatever, but I think that we each probably have our own definition of it.
Do you think they kept it that way because they knew everybody had their own definition of it?
I don't know if they thought about it that way.
Yes.
I would bet, if I was just betting, off the top of my head, that they got it from the Bible.
From the
Because God is just.
Well,
and
if you,
everybody doesn't think that's fair, but it's still just, and it's something that people could lean on.
Does establish justice plainly mean make laws?
Does establish justice plainly mean make laws? What does it mean to you? Is that what it means
That's
to
what it
you?
means to me, make laws.
And laws that what? That do what?
Whatever the people decide they want to.
Well, in other words, what would a just law be? What would that be? A law that does what?
Creates limitations.
Creates limitations. What else? What? Yes.
I think it makes the laws fair.
And what? And a fair law is a law that does what?
Sets boundaries.
Sets boundaries.
Makes people more equal. I mean, in sign language, this is the sign for justice, which is like the balancing thing, and that's what we have for it. So I'm figuring justice is to equal things out.
So that applies equally to everyone.
Yeah. Well, I would think.
You think most laws today do apply equally to everyone? No?
Maybe the majority, but not all of them.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for one presidential candidate to reveal this.
I think one of the points of acknowledging this to be a brilliant piece of work is to realize it's a Rorschach test. The language is meant to be interpreted by the people, and that's why we use people if they were trying to sell it.
Right.
Today, we would have to sell it in just the same way. So we might choose different words, but it would still have to be open to interpretation enough so that everyone
So
can
it
find
can speak-
satisfaction within it.
So it can speak to different people in different ways.
Exactly.
Much like, okay, yes.
One example I thought of with justice and trying to be fair, you're always trying to include everybody, but then at the same time, people are always left out. Like, for example, through our colleges and their admissions standards, you know, then a lot of minorities felt that they didn't have the same opportunities. So then they had to make quotas, you know, to let a certain percentage of minorities. Then other people felt it was reverse discrimination because you have to go by numbers and let them in no matter if it was fair or not. So even in trying to include, it was still a mess.
Well, a lot of you brought up the concept of fairness. Does everyone or most everyone here think that's implicit or embedded within the concept of justice? Is there anyone who would want that term somehow introduced as well?
I don't think that that was a part of the recommendation when it said justice. That's evaluating it, whereas justice is or isn't, and that's no evaluation.
There's no evaluation determining whether justice is or isn't.
Right.
Coming back to the difference between fair and right, you know, it's not always the same thing. So, again, it's something very open to interpretation. I think the theory is that justice tries to temper fairness to get closer to a morally right sort of position.
Okay. Even if we weren't, let's say that we were, it seems like most of you, pretty much, there were about 4 or 5 who liked Felicia's idea, but the rest of you sort of like it as it is. Is there anywhere, you know, for instance, you talked about right, the Bill of Rights was not part of our original Constitution. Is there anywhere in our preamble that you would want to touch upon right or rights or fairness in any way, if you were adding on to our preamble today? In other words, is there anyone here who would create an additional clause that in some way broaches upon that? Rights, responsibilities, fairness. Felicia, you would? What would you do?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think putting in something about fairness. Fairness.
Well, let's think about that, because one thing you can do is not just, as we're going through this first go-round of the preamble, is to consider, is there some other clause that you would want to add to it? Because the preamble was written without a Bill of Rights in mind, for instance. Was there anything that you might want to put in the preamble that actually addresses certain rights or certain responsibilities, things of that sort? Okay, let's move on to a very interesting part, a clause. It's no longer spelled that way, but I'm using the old spelling. It would be EN these days. To ensure, in fact, the group last night, I was in Davis, that was the first thing they voted on, was to change IN to EN. Ensure.
Change their I to E.
Yeah. Domestic, but that's how they did it back then. The stores, okay, ensure domestic tranquility.
Isn't that what Assad is doing?
And so what's your point?
Well, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say how you're going to do it.
Doesn't say, well, should a preamble say?
Well, the preamble's goals. That's all it's all about. So they're good words that sound like good stuff.
So I get the feeling you think there's something we could put it better.
No. I mean, at the time, that sounds good. That's good enough. It's just sweetening the thing for acceptance by the states. And these are the goals we're trying to get. And I think that sounds like a good one to state.
To ensure domestic tranquility. How do you go about, just talking about establishing and ensure domestic tranquility? Any thoughts?
I had a question. Had a context changed that they were from a war with each other and to come in the Civil War? Has it changed? I asked just the question.
So what about this language though today? Would you like it as it is, or would you change it if you could?
Only word that popped in my mind was harmony.
Harmony. To ensure domestic harmony or just harmony?
harmony was there, just.
That's order to, so, to ensure domestic tranquility or to ensure harmony or some other term?
I don't know, it just was.
Harmony,
That was
in a
question.
democracy, how do you go about doing that? But thinking in terms of laws to come, do you try to impede protest or do you allow it and even facilitate it to allow plurality of voices to be heard? Do you try to, what do you do in a democracy to ensure domestic tranquility? Do you allow people to march in the streets and shout to the rafters? But is that what's being allowed today? Or is it being discouraged?
Not just today, but
Yes.
What you said, it's like in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It's not inalienable, it's unalienable. Most people I hear today, these politicians, voting as being inalienable.
Off of their heads. Okay. Art, what do you think about this term harmony?
Oh, you know, I tell you, you look at all of these things, they are successfully undefinable. They are so general, that you can work with.
Well, people make changes based on your suggestion. So, yeah, what were you going to say?
What's that phrase directed at the states? In other words, another way to say it is two states were fighting with each other, rather than the individuals starting grassroots movement.
So let's say that for the sake of argument that was so. Does it, even if it's now applied in a different way, do you still like the language to ensure domestic tranquility? Or yes?
Now, domestic means within the country, could it mean that then, or within the state? I'm not.
Now domestic means within the country.
Right, but at
Yeah.
that point, did that mean within the state?
I can't speak expertly on that. Well, what about that? If it were applied to you today, is that how you would look at it? Domestic tranquility where in the country? What about to ensure harmony? Does anybody like that? You do?
Yeah.
How come?
Because tranquility sounds a little bit more like quietness, so I can take a nap, and harmony sounds a little bit more